Welcome to a special Halloween-themed edition of Seek Out the Arts for October 2024. Hello everyone, Jennifer L. Scott here, and welcome to a special Halloween-themed Seek Out the Arts. In today's episode, we're going to study the illustrations of Edward Gorey. I have a new pianist, composer to share with you, and we're going to be reading a very famous Gothic poem by John Keats. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the Chic Society, which is channel memberships here, for bringing us this wonderful series. In channel memberships, I do one vodcast every Friday. We go live and do an hour-long Zoom call together once a month where we can talk to each other face-to-face over the computer. We have an optional pen pal program. There's so many perks to joining the Chic Society. So if you love this channel and you would like to support it on a greater level, you can consider joining. Membership is only $1.99 a month. There are also upper tiers as well who get recognition in these monthly videos, and that's who you're seeing right now. And at the end of the video, you're going to see the Elegant Connoisseur mentions, so stay tuned for that. Okay, I'm so excited to talk about Edward Gorey with you. This is the first time we've discussed his illustrations in this series, and I first fell in love with Edward Gorey and his work, like many of you might have, by watching the Masterpiece Mystery series on PBS, because he illustrated that iconic opening sequence for Masterpiece Mystery. And I have so many wonderful nostalgic memories of watching that series with my family, and I would never miss that opening. I just almost liked it more than the shows themselves that followed. So I just absolutely love the work of Edward Gorey. Now, his work is very Gothic, eccentric, macabre, and also he's very mysterious because there's not that much information on him. And as a side note, when I do these series for Seek Out the Arts, it's funny because these are just the tip of the iceberg, and usually when I start to study these artists' lives, then I do a deep dive and I need to know more. So I hope that you do the same thing. But let's have a look at some of Edward Gorey's works while I tell you a little bit about him. I think many people believe Edward Gorey is English because his work has such an English quality to it, but he was actually American. He was born in 1925 and he died in the year 2000. He was a writer and an illustrator and a Tony Award winner. His characters exist in these mysterious worlds where mystery happens, notes are exchanged, things are unexplained, and there's always a little bit of absurd humor to it too. Gorey's work is often described as literary nonsense, a genre made famous by one of my favorite authors, Lewis Carroll. His characteristic pen and ink drawings often depict vaguely unsettling narrative scenes in Victorian and Edwardian settings. Also, another fun fact about him is that he loved the New York City Ballet and he attended every performance for 25 years. So he was a patron of the arts himself. Right now you're looking at one of my favorite illustrations of his called An Exhibition. It's from 1965. I looked up commentary on this particular piece, An Exhibition, but I couldn't find anything. But I'll just tell you what I think. I love how Edward Gorey's characters are so fashionably dressed, and they do appear to have a bit of a Victorian Edwardian slant to them, but also mixed with a little bit of modernity. This is surreal, and you can tell that by the man floating above them. There is a skeleton with an overcoat there on the side, ladies in distress laying on the ground, children who are in the midst of all of this, a mythical beast. There is a bat standing on a gentleman's head looking at you. Edward Gorey's illustrations are full of these mysteries. Oh, and I also noticed that the man with the fur coat in the middle, there's like a mysterious face right behind him. Every time you look at one of his illustrations, you might find something new. And there's a lot that's just unexplained, which I like because I feel like you, the viewer, can come up with your own stories about this. I don't know who these people are or why they've gathered. I especially love the fashion. Now, Edward Gorey himself was known for wearing fur coats, which is strange because he was also a big animal advocate, and of course we know fur coats, real fur coats, are not kind to animals, so there was a bit of a paradox there to his nature, but he was always seen in fur coats and his characters are often seen in fur coats as well. His work is often characterized by this pen stroke, and most of his works were just done with black ink. Very few of them have color to them, and some of them, if they do, it's just like a little splash of color here and there. Now, I would describe his work as Gothic-esque, but I have a quote here. In response to being called Gothic, he stated, "If you're doing nonsense, it has to be rather awful because there'd be no point. I'm trying to think if there's a sunny nonsense. Sunny, funny nonsense for children. Oh, how boring, boring, boring. As Schubert said, there is no happy music." And that's true. There really isn't. And there's probably no happy nonsense either. So it's a little defensive, like he's saying, well, my work has to be this dark because there's no such thing as happy nonsense if you're in that genre. There's a little bit of truth to that. I mean, in the Alice stories, they're nonsensical, and there's also a bit of darkness to them as well. And let's just close with a few fun facts about Edward Gorey. He was apparently a very gifted child, and he started drawing at the age of 18 months. He had very little formal art training. He majored in French literature at Harvard. His fashion sense was very unorthodox. As I mentioned previously, he would wear full-length fur coats, ripped jeans, low-top white sneakers, plenty of jewelry, and he had a bushy Edwardian beard. His personal library had over 25,000 books at the time of his death. He was known to say, "My mission in life is to make everybody as uneasy as possible because that's what the world is like." So I would love to know what you think of Edward Gorey. Do you remember him and his work from Masterpiece Mystery on PBS? Let us know in the comment section down below. I wanted to find a Gothic piano ballad that could accompany our viewing of Edward Gorey's works. And so I Googled Gothic piano piece, and I came up with this newly composed piece by Pianza, and he has a YouTube channel, which I'll link down below. It's called A Shadow's Lament, Heartbreaking Piano Waltz. And he writes in the description, "I wrote this while I was sick last week. Enjoy." So obviously this is a very talented person who just writes beautiful works of art while he's sick. So I thought that I would leave him down below and you could discover his work as well. And I really find this piece to be hauntingly beautiful. And I do love a waltz. It's like one of my favorite forms of classical music. And finally, for the poetry corner, I have a very famous Gothic poem by English poet John Keats. It's called La Belle Dame Sans Merci, and John Keats is one of the most studied and highly regarded English romantic poets. So in this poem, a medieval knight meets a fairy woman, La Belle Dame Sans Merci, which means the beautiful lady without mercy. And it ends in horror. So let's enjoy this poem together. La Belle Dame Sans Merci by John Keats. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woebegone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest's done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fevered dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose, fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew, and sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses four. And there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamed, ah, woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamt on the cold hillside. I saw pale kings and princes too, Pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La belle dame sans merci, thee hath in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here on the cold hill's side. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing. So, was it all a dream or a nightmare? Perhaps. But you know when you have those dreams that are almost lucid, like you realize that you're dreaming, but you're in it, and these fantastical things are happening, and you can't stop it. I feel like that's what this poem is. Maybe he dreamt this and had this experience and wrote it down. Apparently, Keats was a little obsessed with death and horror. He wrote this poem months after his brother Tom died of tuberculosis, so this could be his way to, reconcile his feelings about death. But it's such a beautiful poem. I love knights, I love fairies, and I love Gothic poetry, literature, and art, so I really enjoyed this, and I hope that you did too. And now I'm going to share the Elegant Connoisseurs with you. They are the top tier in the Chic Society.
Writing classes with Alan Watt and the LA Writers Lab.
Alan's Scottish Shortbread. Jenny Williams from Carrot Top Paper Shop.
The Elegant Eating Handbook, Timeless Strategies for Lasting Weight Loss and a Peaceful Relationship with Food by Elaine Brisebois.
Guy Blaise, author of Love Like the French, A Guide to Better Romance and Relationships. Dr. Kate Philbin, transpersonal psychologist and professionally certified life and executive coach. Teresa Maples from Self-Care Routine Cards. Carrie Van Hooser, author of 'Tis the Season for Poetry.
And thank you to the following: Catherine Ray, Anne-Marie Ramsey, Ashley Diaz, Heather Barrera, Jenny Candelaria, Jet Raleigh Heron, Gina K. Henry, Kate Holmes, Kelly Ruel, Linda Eckloff, Maria Condor, Nicole Brignol, and Tina Hugao.
Before we go, I'd also like to encourage you to sign up for my seasonal author newsletter. It's completely free. I send it out once a month. This month's letter is not going to be sent out on the 1st of November, but rather on the 4th. So you have time to sign up for it. I'm going to leave it linked down below, and I hope that you will. Our next video is going to be the holiday gift guide. So we're going straight from Halloween to Christmas here. Don't worry, we have some fall stuff planned for November as well. But I hope that you enjoy this series, and thank you so much for your support of my channel. I love you all, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.